The passage I'm going to speak today from is Matthew 23, 1 through 12. If we had celebrated All Saints' Day on any Sunday but November 1st, this is one of the passages that would have been in the lectionary. Then Jesus said to the crowds and to his disciples, "The scribes and the Pharisees sit on Moses' seat. Therefore, do whatever they teach you and follow it, but do not do as they do, for they do not practice what they teach. They tie up heavy burdens, hard to bear, and lay them on the shoulders of others, but they themselves are unwilling to lift a finger to move them. They do all of their deeds to be seen by others, for they make their phylacteries broad and their fringes long. They love to have the place of honor at banquets and the best seats in the synagogue, and to be greeted with respect in the marketplaces and to have people call them rabbi. But you're not to be called rabbi, for you have one teacher, and you are all students. And call no one your father on earth, for you have one Father, the one in heaven. Nor are you called to be instructors, for you have one instructor, the Messiah. The greatest among you will be the servant. All who exalt themselves will be humble, and all who humble themselves will be exalted." My mother was one of the most upright women I have ever known. Now, my Aunt Wilma claims that my mom always cheated at jacks when they were young. And while I also knew you had to watch her when you played dominoes, but she was generally a good example for us kids. She set incredibly high standards, both for herself and for us kids. As tends to be the case, Dad was a softie and she was a disciplinarian. We were not supposed to cuss, period. I didn't know what certain words even meant until I got an American Heritage Dictionary and looked them up, because I couldn't even let my parents know that I knew some of those words. And it's also helpful to have the official definition of the words. Mom was pretty good about keeping her temper. However, she did inherit enough of my red-headed grandfather's temper that words were said. Not strictly Sunday school words, although two of them do have a theological place. They're not polite words, but in today's day and age, they certainly weren't as bad as they could have been. When she cussed, all of us kids reported it. Now, children are annoying. If you've ever been a parent, you know that a child will call you out when you have done exactly what you have told them not to do. Even if she muttered one of the 3 words under her breath and we heard it, we reported it. Typically, the words were born out of frustration with her kids, so we're both the cause and the effect. As obnoxious as we were, I scarcely think we were unique in reporting parental missteps. My first husband's parents were both heavy smokers. He would periodically tell them that it was bad for them. They would periodically tell him to mind his own business. I suppose best case analysis is that kids keep us honest. I suppose a humble parent would acknowledge what he shouldn't have done when he did it and would try harder. Do what I say and not what I do comes a whole lot easier when there's humility attached. Jesus, who spends most of Matthew condemning the scribes and Pharisees, in this passage basically tells people to listen to what they teach. However, don't do as they do. Their lessons are valuable and can get lost in the personal failings of the teacher. How many parents have begged their kids to learn from their mistakes because, honestly, child, you're not going to be able to make all of these mistakes? Probably. I know you're pushing it and you're trying to do it, but you can't make all of the mistakes in the world. Do as I say, not as I do or I have done. If the teacher doesn't make changes, though, the students may not necessarily feel the need. Well, the Pharisees do it. Yes, and if all of your little friends jumped off a bridge, would you jump too? And knowing my friends, I probably would. But Jesus was making a point about the scribes and the Pharisees, specifically those who were trying to get rid of him. The laws that they taught were not in and of themselves bad laws. They knew what the laws were. Had they stuck with the teaching of the laws, both by their words and by their deeds, there wouldn't have been a problem. However, they made the laws burdensome. They set themselves up as judge, jury, and executioner of the people. They were highly regarded and loved to show off their knowledge of the law and their external righteousness through large phylacteries and big fringes on their prayer shawls. They wound up missing the whole point of the exercise, though, by focusing on the externals. The phylactery is a physical reminder to keep God's laws before them. The fringes were a way of reminding them that prayer is a special time. The devices themselves are not bad until we lose the whole point of why we are doing this. It's like focusing on setting up and decorating the most beautiful Christmas tree we can and forgetting why there even is a Christmas. The religious leaders were powerful and came from a place of privilege. By imposing additional laws, not from Moses, and by imposing burdens on the people, they were making matters of faith painful and burdensome. And Jesus pointed out that they were not doing anything to alleviate the burden they had put on the people. They sat in the best places in the banquets and in synagogues and believed it was their due. A word of warning about taking the best seat at the table. It may not have been set for you. Once we had a going-away luncheon for someone, and a young squirt in our office sat down by the boss so he could bend his ear. The boss sent him away because probably the guest of honor really should have been at the head of the table. Jesus levels a series of charges against the leaders. They're not called to be called rabbi, which means master or instructor, because we have one teacher and we are all students. We have one Father in heaven. We are all servants and children of God, and in that sense, the playing field is supposed to be level. No one is greater than the least. To assume that you are great or important overlooks who your master is, which is God in heaven. Finally, Jesus talks about servant leadership. The best managers are those who lead by example, who will not ask staff to do something that they themselves wouldn't do, especially if they had the capability. When a leader demonstrates that he's not too good or too important to do the menial work, it should send a message to the staff that they too are not above doing the work that they are given. Jesus took on a lot of nasty jobs and tasks in trying to teach us how to love one another. The nastiest job was his dying for our sins, that we could be reunited in a loving relationship with God and no longer be estranged from our Father. It teaches a lesson, better to do what you ask, better to do what you are asking others to do. If it becomes a matter of do as I say and not as I do, people tend to wonder just how important the message is. Jesus calls us to be faithful in our words and actions. While we will trip up sometimes, nevertheless, we need to keep trying. It's not our job to judge or condemn those who fail, just as we wouldn't want to be judged when we fail. Jesus promises to be with us and to lift our burdens. If we can, we should try and lift each other's burdens as well, but certainly at least not add to it. And all of this is a simple thing, but sometimes the simplest things are the hardest. Amen.